So as war is raging in Israel, why are so many celebrities spewing pro-Hamas talking points? Now, according to a new report, audience members walked out of the Dave Chappelle show in Boston last week after he criticized Israel defending itself and bombing Gaza, and said students supporting Palestinians should not be losing jobs over it. That's not what happened, Dave. I happen to think you're a funny guy, but you need to be a little bit more informed. The 31 groups, for example, at Harvard, they were blaming Israel, the victims of terror, for what happened, and only Israel. That's just pure ignorance. And the rest of the Hollywood, by the way, they can't help themselves, predictably. You have dozens of so-called A-list celebrities writing Biden a letter calling for a, quote, an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire in Gaza and Israel. Why don't they send that to Hamas, the terror group that killed the 1,400 Israelis and took all the hostages? Meanwhile, after a brief hiatus over there at MSDNC, NBC News with Tom Brokaw. Yeah, Mehdi Hassan returned to MSDNC in their airwaves, where he continues to spew his anti-Israel talking points. Take a look at this.
Because a lot in the rest of the world would say, OK, if you're going to compare Ukraine and Israel, Biden and a lot of people in America may see Ukraine and Israel as the same. A lot of people around the world see Russia and Israel the same. Right. Israel is the occupier of the West Bank and Gaza. Isn't making sure civilians don't get unnecessarily killed in conflict a key part of international humanitarian law? So tonight, with an Israeli ground invasion of Gaza still looming, is this the kind of war, a year-long war perhaps, according to Israel's own top minister, that the Biden administration has really signed up for?
Maybe you should be telling them to put down their arms and stop killing innocent men, women, and children and taking innocent men, women, and children hostage. That'd be a good start. And if Hamas lays down their arms, no one else has to die. They started this war. Israel didn't want this war, but Israel will win this war. Now, first, Israeli Special Envoy for combating anti-Semitism, Noa Tishby, is with us. Founder of the Lawfare project, Brooke Goldstein, is with us. Noa, let's get your take on this first here. I don't think I get shocked often, but the level of virulent hate and anti-Semitism I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. And it's not just on college universities. It's not just in Hollywood. It's, in the streets of New York. I mean, Times Square is packed. It's all over the world. It's in Great Britain. It is in other parts of Europe. It is in Australia, other continents. And it's a little shocking, shocks my conscience, and I'm sure it does yours as well.
It actually, sadly, is not shocking at all. This is something that I'm sure Brooke can talk to as well. It's been a huge part of my work for many, many years. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and these are the days where all the anti-Semites are crawling out of their holes. I want to talk to Hollywood for a second, because you were referring to a letter that came out by a smaller group of Hollywood people, the usual hacks like Susan Sarandon that jumps to bash Israel at any point possible. However, only recently, a new letter was sent to President Biden with a lot of big celebrities that is actually calling to release the hostages without demanding a ceasefire. Some of the people that are signed on the letter are Katy Perry, Orlando Bloom, Justin Timberlake, Tiffany Haddish, Zoe Saldana, Gal Gadot, Madonna, Chris Rock, a lot of people. So there is actually a change that is happening in Hollywood, finally, and a lot of people in the intelligentsia and elites are taking a pause, rethinking their position on Israel, on Hamas, and on the entirety of the Middle East. And I hope this actually trickles down at some point, because this has been a very lonely and aggressive and anti-Semitic climate out there.
Well said. And Brooke, I'll go to you because, if you look at one border city, 10,000 rockets in 10 years, that's like a constant barrage of rockets. There's no freedom. Kids can't play outside. Vitamin D is kind of vital and important. Fresh air is kind of important for kids, but they're playing in playgrounds that are underground in bunkers. That's their everyday life. That's the way they live. And yet nobody seems sympathetic to that fact. Or the fact the same thing is happening in the north with Hezbollah and out of Lebanon. At some point, doesn't Israel need to have a protective zone where these rockets can no longer be fired into their border cities, that it won't be tolerated, that no more innocent people are going to die, and if you attack Israelis and you commit acts of terror, you are going to pay the ultimate price, and that is Israel is going to destroy you. That's what I would want America to do if we were attacked.
That should have been the policy for Israel for quite some time. Israel could have wiped out Hamas a long time ago. Make no mistake about that. But, you know, what's so appalling, and I'm happy that you mentioned the 10,000 rockets, because when I was in Israel just 2 years ago, when 5,000 rockets were being shot at me and my children, nobody in Hollywood was calling for a ceasefire. Nobody in Hollywood now is writing letters calling for the cessation of the incitement to violence and actual violence happening against Jewish students across the country. Nobody is calling for an end to the pro-Hamas rallies that are happening in New York, in London, in Sydney, where they're calling for gassing the Jews. And as a human rights attorney with a expertise in the laws of armed conflict, I'm appalled at these ceasefire demands because they do not mention Hamas. They are solely about dictating to Israel how to defend her citizens from a brutal terror attack. And people like Dave Chappelle, who sit in the West from their position of privilege and attempt to dictate to the Jewish people, the indigenous people of Israel, how to protect their own women and children, Israel is not going to listen to them because it has no choice. It must eliminate the Hamas threat, and the entire Western world should be thanking Israel for doing what it has to do on the front lines of the war against Islamist terrorism.
What do we do about the root cause, Noah? And that, of course, being the #1 state sponsor of terror, that would be the Iranians. They have gotten away with these proxy wars for decades and decades. At some point, they've got to pay the price. Is this the point?
I don't know when the point is, but they definitely do have to pay the price. When you look back at literally almost every conflict, certainly in the Middle East, you see the tentacle reach Iran. So you look at Hezbollah and you find Iran, that's in Israel's north. You look at Hamas at Israel's south and you find Iran. So Iran is the #1 state sponsoring of terrorism in the world and the #1 anti-Semitic sponsor in the entire world as well. And they absolutely need to be stopped. We should not negotiate with them. We should definitely not fund them. I'm very happy that that funding was stopped to them. And everybody should acknowledge the human rights that you have in Iran are the human rights that you're going to have in the West if they get their way. And this is to what Brooke was saying. This is what everybody needs to understand. Israel is fighting the West's war. Israel is on the front line, at the forefront of a worldwide war against Islamic radicalism, Islamic Nazism that is acting a massacre on our people, and it's coming to the West if it's not stopped. So when the United States went after ISIS, when the United States decided to go after ISIS, nobody was standing with a stopwatch and trying to stop the United States and saying, all right, enough now, ceasefire. How can you have a ceasefire with Hamas when they broke every ceasefire that Israel's ever signed with them? So this would periodically, again, to what Brooke was saying, every few months there'd be rockets thrown out of Gaza. Israel would attack. Then Hamas go, all right, ceasefire. Israel would agree. And within a couple of months, it would happen again. So why would we sign a ceasefire after this systematic massacre of Israeli citizens? It's just not going to happen.
You know, I'd ask these idiots in Hollywood, if it was your child that was beheaded, your baby that was beheaded, your daughter kidnapped or raped or killed, would you want your country to defend your family and get those people responsible? I think the answer is obvious. Anyway, Noah, Brooke, thank you both. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.